Hey there, everybody. Welcome to this Ocean Life podcast. I'm your host, Josh Peterson. Today's episode, we have a part 2 with the Cooper family, a family here in Santa Cruz who shut down their house, left their jobs, grabbed their 2 kids, and jumped on a sailboat in Fiji 9 months ago, January of 2019, and have sailed around Fiji ever since. So today we catch up with Brian and Robyn, who describes their first few months of learning their sailboat, Renegade, the ins and outs of sailing among the islands and reefs of Fiji, developing confidence in their sailing capabilities. The Coopers share a perspective on traveling in the outer Fijian Islands, surfing incredible waves, diving, fishing, boat schooling the kids, and spending time in local villages where they've all learned and embraced the Fijian culture. We hear of how the family is adapting to life afloat, and how their 2 daughters, ages 9 and 12, are growing and changing as a result of spending tons of time in the ocean and interacting with the Fijian culture. Brian and Robyn talk about the next major part of their trip, which takes them from Fiji over a 10-day passage down in New Zealand, then over to Indonesia, and other epic parts of the South Pacific. So, a great catch-up with a wonderful family who are pursuing their dreams, living on a boat, surfing, fishing, diving, and all the other great things about being in the South Pacific. So, thanks everybody for being here and supporting the podcast, minimizing plastic, picking up trash, doing something good for each other on the water and the ocean, however and whenever we can. So, with that, thanks for being here. Let's get into the ocean life of the Cooper family. So, Brian, last we talked, it was in like your guest house at your home in Santa Cruz. It was, I think it was early January, if not super late December. And you had a floor full of bags and spear guns and fishing rods and all kinds of stuff because you were getting packed with your family to go jump on a plane in like a couple days from when we spoke to jump on Fiji. And now here we are 9 months later, and you guys are still on the boat and you're rocking it and everything, man. So, dude, thanks for making time to chat and catch us up on what you've been doing.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here again. I guess I could say we've done so much and we haven't done anything. So we've used all the dive gear. We've sort of traveled a lot, but we haven't even left Fiji yet. So we haven't really traveled far. We've just covered, I don't know how many hundreds of islands Fiji has, but we've done, so 1,000 miles probably in Fiji or something. And it's been great. I mean, everybody's happy and healthy and we're having a blast.
Yeah, man, that's insanely cool. So just kind of remind us, and for folks who might not have heard the first podcast, like just give us the lay of the land. So your family of 4, tell us about the family, who everybody is and the ages and all that kind of stuff to kind of get us started.
Yeah, I've got 2 daughters. The youngest one is 9 years old now, and the oldest one is 12 years old. Isla is the youngest. Malia's the oldest. Myself, 43 years old. And my wife, who's also 43 years old, Robyn.
Nice. Family of 4. And so you guys, like me, kind of Santa Cruz lifestyle, but you made the decision to kind of shut the house down. I mean, you have somebody living there and just pursue a dream you've had for a long time. And for folks listening, definitely go back. If you haven't heard it, talk about sort of how this all came to be, the evolution of the dream between Robyn and Brian to get on a boat and what you guys have done to get there. But for today now, so the 4 of you are out in Fiji. So where are you like right now as we're talking?
We are anchored off of the biggest city in Fiji right now, Suva, which is on the south side of the main island. And we've got great internet access right here. We're just sort of coming in and we've been out in the outer islands for about 2 months now where we haven't been into a town. We've sort of been without internet access for a good chunk of that time and really living like the Fijian village lifestyle where you show up on an island, you go in and you meet the village chief. You ask for permission to dive on his reefs and surf the waves and sort of just be part of their village. And they give you permission, and you're free to sort of mix with the village, and we just island hop like that. You come and you find a new spot and meet new people. And we've met a bunch of people, like-minded people with boats along the way, with families, and we've hung out with different crews of people, I guess. Yeah, and that's sort of how Fiji's been. We pick a new destination, we take off for it when the weather's right. And we kind of try to explore everything that island or that anchorage has for us. And then we move on.
Yeah, man, that's rad. So okay, I have like 4,000 questions with let me make sure
Yeah,
I
I
like
could just
actually.
ramble myself. Yeah, keep
No, yeah, I
myself in
bet. I
check.
bet. No, that question one is you mentioned there's hundreds of islands and there's like unlimited, almost unlimited possibilities of places to go. How do you guys decide where to go next?
Yeah, well, in 9 months that we've been in Fiji, we sort of started where the boat was, and that just so happened it was in sort of the area where the famous surf breaks are. Cloud breaks right there, restaurants, Nomotu. So it was sort of right where we wanted to get started, anyways. And so we kind of felt out the surf breaks, and it was the off season, which was great. So there was really nobody else around. A lot of these surf breaks were empty, and it was close to a harbor where we had the boat, so we could sort of hide out and get used to when the weather came. We could hide out away from storms. We could kind of go in and fix things with a small town there, and mechanics that could help if we needed it. And then we just sort of got more and more confidence and just started going further and further away. And we explored I guess it'd be the northern chain of islands, the Mamanuthas and the Asawas, which are kind of chock full of resorts. So it's kind of where everybody goes when they come to Fiji. It's a quick boat ride from the airport, and just beautiful. I mean, the diving was great, the water was clear, but you did have a lot of tourists sort of always there. And after about 4 months, we decided that we would journey off towards the east and go check out some of these more remote places. Shoot, it's been 3-4 months of that now, where we just started to travel east and find new destinations and sort of try to find good surf breaks. And some of them were documented in magazines or travel blogs and stuff like that. And some of them we just sort of found on our own.
Oh, wow, man. Which is kind of like, I remember chatting with you again back at your house, getting prepared. And like, I was thinking, and we were both kind of pontificating about like the unknowns, the what ifs, the most like
Yeah.
the wildest dreams of surf and fish that could come true. Right. And so you mentioned there's breaks you've been to surf that are like names that we all know, but there are other places that might not even have a name. I mean, so how's it been for you? Just kind of focusing on the surf to start, like you being frothing to get out there to get waves that you have never probably seen or ever, have never even touched in your life. I mean, how's it been? Like the expectations you had for the surf so far, how, what's that been for you?
Yeah, I guess right off the bat, I expected to surf way more than I have. I mean, the consistency of the surf has not been what I was hoping for. Santa Cruz, you surf 5 days a week, no matter what. It's a piece of cake.
Yeah.
Here, I've had to search out breaks. I've had to search out someone to ride them with sometimes. And
Huh.
I won't lie, man. Some of the breaks here are just dry reef, like gaping barrels, just scary
Heavy.
stuff. I mean, even when it's head high, it's just like ready to just tear your skin off when you hit the reef. So I won't lie, I've been way over my head at a lot of spots, and maybe I've just jumped in on some shoulders just to say I surfed it. But then there's been some breaks that have just been epic. I mean, some of the well-known ones, like Frigates Pass, we hit on a day, was just me and one other guy with offshore winds, and just surfed it all day long, and completely just loved it. And then there's been some waves, like I said, that I'm just like, scared to go because I'm either by myself and there's no hospital around for 2 days.
Yeah.
It makes it exciting and stuff for sure. It's been unreal. I do wish that we could have found some more breaks for the kids to ride. It's just been impossible to find a little sandbar, and there's just no sand. It's just dry reef in a lot of places. So
They're not quite ready to huck themselves off like a 6-foot ledge and like land on like a foot of water and get drilled on a reef.
not at all. Where's Cowles when you need it, man? I need the Cowles of the South Pacific right now.
For
But
sure, man.
We are frothing to get to New Zealand next, and I know that's got just tons of surf breaks for every level person. So we'll talk about that more probably in a little bit. But we're super excited to get some surf that everybody can handle and stuff.
Right. Now, how about, like, I remember again looking with you at all the gear you had laid out and trying to be super lean and mean because you're flying out with your gear and then the boat has limited space and there's only so many things you can bring. But how has your quiver of boards stood up so far in the last 9 months out there?
I haven't lost any yet, but I've definitely dinged the heck out of them, and the sun is just horrible on boards. I mean, the heat.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if these boards were, like shaped for Santa Cruz, but some of them have bubbles and, delams and just crap like that. But I also didn't bring any of my nicest boards. We left like a brand new Pearson Arrow longboard at home that just we didn't want to ruin it. And it's fine. I can leave these boards in Fiji when I go home. If I've got any that are, shot, I'll just leave them. So no big deal. I'm not anal about what I ride or anything like that. So it doesn't really matter if they've got some boils on them and they're dinged. And I'm not a good repair guy, so they're going to all look like they've got duct tape on them when I get back.
Yeah, but they're working for you. They're lasting so far. Like you're
Yeah,
able
no,
to.
they're totally
Yeah.
lasting, amazingly enough. Yeah, I've been with a guy from Australia that snapped 2 boards last week, and he's down to his last one. So I felt
Oh,
pretty
oh.
lucky. Pretty
Huh.
lucky myself not to have done that.
So you mentioned like Frigates Pass, which is like a super well-known spot. You had it like offshore winds. One other guy was probably super memorable.
Yeah.
Beyond that, were there other memorable sessions, like or even specific like barrels or waves or anything?
Oh yeah, some of the single like solitary rides I've had on some of these waves that you just don't think you're going to be able to find when you can ride, and you finally commit and go and you make it. I've gotten a couple of just insane barrels that I was just wanting to get one ride out of the reef we were at, and
Yeah.
just cool stuff like that. Yeah, but a wave like Frigates is just epic. It's like 300 yards long, and there's a barrel section, and it's just epic. I mean, it picks up every little ounce of swell that's out there. It was like hardly a 4 foot or 5 foot swell, but it was like almost double
Wow.
overhead on set. So
Oh my goodness.
pretty epic.
Oh yeah, man. So back to like I'm gonna keep going back again like a broken record, but like chatting with you early and the story behind you and Robyn getting prepared for this trip. She had done like the majority of like the on the water sailing stuff. She'd done some classes, did the Baja. She'd done a bunch of things. You're a boat guy. You have a boat. You're a salty guy. You understand it. But the sailing, all that stuff was kind of, I believe if I remember right, was more like kind of, what she was like not training for, but preparing for. But now here we are 9 months later. And dude, I think it's trial by fire for you in terms of the theory of sailing, the boat, the rigging, the sails, and everything in between, man. So how's that been for you? Just like the crash course in it all.
Oh, it's for sure a crash course. I mean, like I said in our first interview, I was expecting to have a boat that I didn't know anything about, and showing up and trying to figure out what all the buttons and switches and valves do, and that's exactly what it was. But we figured it all out, and then the sailing part of it. I mean, the navigation has been awesome. Like going from Fiji is chock full of reefs that are just shallow, and the entrances are crazy with currents and stuff like that. And we figured out how to use the different navigation softwares that you have. Garmin charts is fine. And then aerial photography has been a lifesaver in almost every place you come in, because all the reefs are basically visible from aerial satellites. It's awesome. You can navigate the boat right from the imagery. It's today's software is rad. So it's like the old chart plotters that you have on boats from that are $3,000 or $4,000. They're almost useless nowadays, because you can buy a $200 tablet and download a free aerial photo software and Garmin Navionics charts for a couple $100, and you're completely set. So I do all my navigation through tablets, and so that's saved our hide everywhere. Being able to look at aerial photos, charts, and then we get someone up on the bow, and we try not to come into anchorages unless you've got daylight where you can see the reefs and stuff. So with those 3 things working for us, we've been really safe. Almost perfect record. We've scraped the reef once, but it was a minor scrape. Didn't really stop us in our tracks, just a little scrape. And the sailing's been fun, and we're 9 months in here, and we've done a ton of sailing, but we're still learning. Like every time we go downwind or upwind or sidewind, we're figuring out what sail combinations to use, because we've got a ketch here that's got 2 masts. You've got your head sail, your Genoa, you've got a mainsail and a mizzen, and they don't always work together in unison. Sometimes you have to run 2 out of the 3 to get so they're not trapping wind or blocking wind for the other sail. So we're still sort of figuring it out, which says a lot. It's a lot to try to tune the boat and make it as efficient as possible.
And then it's cool, like following you guys on Instagram, which I love to see. And there's always, like, not always, but a lot of times there's a mention or a picture of like Brian's in the engine compartment. Brian's looking at the transmission. There's plumbing, there's electrical, there's motor, engine work. Like you're like a full on like super dimensional handyman. And so what you knew, I remember chatting with you, you're like, hey, I got to figure what tools to bring. Like you were prepared for that. But how has that been? Like just having little weird troubleshooting things probably very constantly, and then maybe some larger things. Like take us through all that for you.
Oh man, it's amazing, because all you've got is time on your hands, Josh. It's like that's all I've got. So it's okay. Like today, waiting for your call, I could have ran out and maybe tried to catch a couple of waves at the entrance to the harbor, But I just started digging into a project, and it wasn't a fun project. It was messing with the toilets up front so that they would go to a holding tank, which is what we need when we're in a bay and all that. And I just opened up a can of worms, right? A 15-minute job turned into 6 hours, just, hitting pipes and scratching my hands and stuff like that. And everything you just learn from scratch. You kind of figure it out. You figure out what it needs. Our dinghy motor, which came with the boat, I've had to clean the carburetor on it 3 times. It gets gummed up with just little pieces of gaskets that are old that fall into there, and it clogs the needle valve. So I seem to take that thing apart about once a month, and it's fun. You dig into it and you figure out where the problem is, and you put it back together, and it runs perfect for another 2 or 3 weeks. And it hasn't been anything really major with the boat. We've had a fuel leak in one of the hoses that I found and had to take it in and have some guy, weld a patch on it. Definitely no game stoppers. It hasn't slowed us down hardly at all. I mean, all the little things have been things that we just keep going and fix them as we go. So yeah, nothing really big, but yeah, I mean, it's a combination of, like you said, plumbing, electrical, and physical motor parts. It's a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So I'm just guessing, like, I always feel good when I fix something, whether it's like, I don't know, my lawnmower or, I don't know, just random stuff on my old boat or, stuff in the garage. It doesn't matter. But you're like fixing things that like you need. There's the necessities, you can't call the repair guy to come fix your plumbing. You are the repair guy. So that like the feeling you get to fix something, like you must get so stoked when you like troubleshoot something and fix it, because dude, there ain't nobody else out there to do it for you.
I mean, it's everything. A water pump goes out and you're without water until you get that thing fixed, and you can pump your fresh water back again. It's everything. Yeah. You rely on all these systems. So I guess that's the one thing that really happens when you sail is you give up a lot of the things that you have at home, like hot baths and stuff. You give up a lot of those things that you take for granted, for sure.
So a lot of fixing. We're talking about surfing, fixing, but then also we were chatting about, and I'm drilling into you and all the things that like I'd be like frothing to do out there, which is also like fishing and spearfishing, right? Getting after it out there. And so, I mean, and what's so rad, and I'm going to have the same conversation with Robyn, but like, it's been so cool to watch like your Instagram feed over 9 months because yeah, first it was like, oh, we're so stoked. We got this rainbow runner. It's a small one. And you can see like, you're so stoked. And now it's like, dude, you're holding this mahi and a wahoo side by side, and like,
oh, I know,
it's just so sick. Like I can tell, like you're dialing it in slowly always. But I mean, like, how about that? So talk about the fishing and the spearfishing part of this.
Man, I just turn into an animal when the fish are on. My wife calls me a monkey because I just start jumping around and yelling, and it's like I think I enjoy that more than anything else is catching a fish. And it can be a 3-pound grouper, it can be a little rainbow runner, or what they have around here, these Spanish mackerels. Yeah. And it seemed like in the first part of our trip, we were just in the little fish, we were never really outside the reef, I guess is what it was. We were always inside the reefs. And now that we're doing all this traveling to the outer islands, it's like, as soon as you go offshore, it's like, if you're out there at 9 a.m. in the morning, you're going to get hit with a mahi. I mean, it's almost clockwork. They seem to bite when the early morning stuff. And so the more offshore we're doing, the more bigger mahi and the wahoo and the stuff like that. And it's just, dude, funny, we're on a sailboat, and a lot of people are these hardcore sailors, right? Like they leave and it's all about wind. For me, I leave and it's all about the poles. I get the poles out before I even put a sail up usually. And so fisherman first, sailor second, I guess is our story here. I mean, we'll have 3 poles out the back before we even raise a sail.
Oh man, I love your style, man. That's so rad. And so what's like your best fish? Like what's your most memorable?
Man, they're all different. I mean, like that double, when we caught that wahoo and that mahi side by side, one, both on at the same time. That was by far the highlight. And there, it's not like, and you don't turn around to go back through those hot spots. You're sailing, so you just keep going in a straight line. So you're kind of limited on your multiple hookups. We probably could have circled back around there and got a bunch more fish, but you just keep going in a straight line. And so, we try to get a fish passage where we feel pretty good, and sometimes we get 2. And then what I love about it is, we can eat a fish ourselves, no problem. We have a fridge that'll last a few days. But when I get a second fish, straight into the village and give it to, the first family that meets you on the beach. And the Fijian people, I can't say enough about how kind they are and how hospitable and how just like warming, and they just want to sit down and talk story. And if you bring a fish in, you're their guest of, I mean, in all honesty, you're seriously the guest of honor. They reward you with breakfast and dinner and bananas, and they load your boat up with just about anything, that they have. And they just love their fish. Just love it.
Oh, wow. How cool. So stay on that for a moment, like the cultural aspect. I mean, the introduction to a brand new native culture that you've never,
Yeah.
or maybe you haven't interacted with in the past, but now it's like you're getting familiar with it. You know the drill. You go talk to the chief, you roll into a bay, you ask permission, you do all these things. I mean, how's that been for you guys, you personally, but also as the family, just understanding and seeing how a totally different culture lives versus where we're from, which is kind of rat race, California, America style, you know?
Yeah, and yeah, as you can imagine, like these people are just as interested in where you're from and what you're doing as we are with how they're living life. So it really just ends up being this back and forth about telling stories. You just tell stories for 6 hours when you go in, and it works out well because out here in the South Pacific, there's trade wind days, and it just blows for a week straight where you can't really go offshore to go diving or surfing, and so you just find things to do, which is when we're out in front of a village, it just makes sense to go in and hang out with the villagers and the kids. Like you go in and the first thing you see is about 30 kids, like just bum rushing the shore to help you get the dinghy up and to say hi and to, introduce themselves. And then they kind of bring you into their, whatever, there's always these like families within the village, right? So you get brought into one family and then you kind of hang out with them for the week and you get invited to dinner. And you do your best because they're so giving to just bring back something, like it could be a fish is great. It could be a loaf of banana bread that you baked on the boat and you bring in, and you just kind of have this exchange of hanging out. And they speak good English, so it's really easy to talk. There's a little bit of a language barrier, but not much at all. They're really, it's really easy to socialize with them. Yeah, Robyn will sit back and learn to cook dishes from the wife. Malia she's picked up this basket weaving stuff, and she's learned how to weave this basket that nobody in Fiji, none of the villages know how to weave. So she shows up and she'll weave one. And it literally, the whole village comes out to watch it, and they start trading knowledge. Like she teaches them how to weave that basket, and they teach them one of theirs. And so it kind of just turns into this exchange of stuff, and it's awesome.
Wow, that's really pretty special because that's something that she'll remember like forever and ever and ever,
Yeah, we've learned to cook with coconut, meaning just like take a coconut and scrape the meat out and squeeze the milk out of it, which is what they use for baking everything. It's like milk and butter combined. So all of like the scones and the bread and all that's just made with basically coconuts that wash up on the beach. It's so cool. Figure out how to use those resources that are right there.
Yeah, and so you guys are adopting a lot or some of that with your own day to day, like what you're learning from the local Fijians. You're incorporating that into your cooking and everything else.
Oh yeah, for sure. But our diet on the boat is fish. It's using that coconut milk to bake pancakes or biscuits or whatever. I mean, it's amazing. It's been fun changing our diet for one, but to use what they're offering,
Oh yeah, that's cool. So go back to the kids for a moment. So it's interesting, like you said, you have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old. Sorry, I forgot if the
9-year-old. Yeah,
9-year-old. Okay. So in the past 9 months, how would you kind of characterize the change in them, if at all, from when they were, life in Santa Cruz, middle school, elementary school till today?
Man, that's a tough question because, you just don't, the changes happen so slow.
Yeah.
I mean, physically they're growing up. I don't know maybe it's just that, that 12-year-old body is changing fast. So that's the most noticeable thing for me. But then, they're like free diving. For example, my 9-year-old is just a fish. I mean, she was down 30 feet deep the other day. She did like a 10-meter free dive, and it just blew my mind that she's that comfortable in the water after being here and swimming and just picked it up, and I just was blown away. I was down there, my 12-year-old got certified, scuba certified, and we haven't done very many tank dives, but I was just doing a shallow dive with her just to use some of our tanks up so we could have them refilled, and all of a sudden I hear this knock on my head and I'm down 30 feet deep, and my 9-year-old daughter swam all the way down and knocked me in the head, because she was just following us on the surface. So just stuff like that,
rad.
Yeah. I mean, I was really hoping we would surf a bunch with them and I would watch them grow. I brought a shortboard for Malia to step into, and that just hasn't happened. So the free diving has sort of taken the place of the days of not surfing. We've done just a ton of free diving and spearfishing.
Yeah, that's so cool. How about like the more personal aspect, like the self-confidence, them knowing other people, walking into a village or an island they've never been to and being able to hang out and chat with complete strangers? I mean, how's that transition been? Or were they already like that before you guys even left?
No, not at all. I mean, my youngest daughter is the more social one, and yeah, she can walk into a village and have 30 kids following her around in about 10 minutes and having fun.
Yeah.
My 12-year-old's, but it's coming to her. You know, she can go in and she knows how to introduce herself and ask people's names, and then she has she has a group of friends that she hangs out with, and she's been able to do this over and over. So it's great. I think it's great practice socially for them to be able to go in and, you know, introduce themselves and get people's names, and then just find a crew of people to hang out with. Because let's face it, they want their time away from the adults once in a while. we're not always that fun.
What?
Clean your
Come
room,
on now.
clean your boat, do your homework. So anyways, yeah, they tend to escape from time to time and go into the villages and hang out. We actually sent them in for a day of school in one of the villages, which was kind of cool.
Oh, that's way cool. Have they had any like homesickness or longing for things familiar back in Santa Cruz?
Yeah, most definitely. My youngest loves her friends back at home, and yes, she definitely is homesick and wants to be with her buddies. And that's because those are her long-term friends, you know. And around here, you don't really. That's the one thing we've noticed. You're never going to make long-term friends. Now we go to a village and we hang out for a week, and it's pretty easy to say goodbye. We've had a number of boats that we've hung out with for, you know, a month or a month and a half now. And when they go their opposite ways, it's a little harder to say goodbye, and because you kind of make some more bonds. But the friends we had at home were, you know, years of hanging out, and so she still is really tied to those people. And so, you know, there's always the chatting online and stuff like that, which is cool, and catching up and that. But yeah, definitely there's a lot of homesickness for sure.
Yeah. So we're talking about so far 9 months. You've had, you know, been jumping around between island to island, and most of the passages, you know, are a few hours. It looks like, and you'll tell me, but how many like long? Like I think you had one overnight or a couple overnight passages, like of some distance.
Yeah, we've had a couple overnight, and a lot of it is you have to time it to come into the destination at the right time of day. So you can't just leave willy-nilly and get there at, you know, 10 o'clock at night, because you can't see anything. And so we've had a couple of 24-hour passages, so overnights. We've timed a couple of them where we leave at sunset and then we arrive, you know, at 9 a.m. So we've done a few of those, like let's stay up all night or 3-hour watches, trying to get ready for, you know, what's going to be about a 10-day passage to go to New Zealand, where it's, you know, it's our first real committed sailing experience in my opinion. So we're nervously excited, I guess, for this next a month from now. We're going to leave for that. And so, you know, I know it's different. Single overnight, you're tired the next day, and you know, it hasn't added up 10 days in a row of doing these overnights. So yeah, we don't know exactly what to expect, but I know anybody can do 10 days, and we'll get there and then have that under our belts. And at that point, I'll call myself a seasoned sailor.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, you'll definitely be able to do that. So you've been doing like smaller passages, some 24 hours, and then like now. So what's your like the game plan or the mindset you have to shift into? I mean, I know you haven't done a 10-day passage yet, but like, how are you guys preparing for that? Is it like just more food, more water? Is it like just stowing your gear differently? Like, how are you kind of getting ready to do that whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing inspections on the boat, making sure our rigging's strong. I mean, this is a passage to New Zealand where you're getting into the lower latitudes and you have a potential of hitting a storm. And because it's 10 days and the fronts move through about every 7 days, you're going to hit a storm somewhere. And so I think you try to hit it closer to Fiji than New Zealand, where there can be stronger. And so the good thing is you'll start out your journey probably in crappy weather, and you should end it in good weather, unless you get hit by the next front because you were too slow. But no, we're just inspecting all of our boat, making sure, the oil's changed, the fuel filters are changed. We're topping up with fuel. Food's not really that big a deal. We're super looking forward to getting to New Zealand and getting some really quality wine and cheese.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I don't think we're going to overly stock with food. 10 days is easy. So it's stuff you got to make it easy to cook while you're on passage, because you're all heeled over half the time. So
right.
Robyn will probably prepare some meals, but mostly, stowing gear, like all the dinghy's got to be brought up on deck, which we haven't had to do when we've been in Fiji. We just kind of lift it up on a hoist in the back. Surfboards will be brought down below, just all that stuff that you don't want it to break loose at the wrong time out in the sea. So we'll batten down the hatches. We're pretty confident with our sails and the rigging now. The motor, hopefully we don't have to motor a whole ton, but we've ran the motor for 24 hours at a time, and so I'm pretty confident with it. She's old, but she seems to keep putting along, and she starts up sure thing, knock on wood, every time. So yeah, we're pretty much ready to go. We're just going to hang out in the southern part of Fiji for another month and go back out to this island called Kondavu. And then October 10th is sort of our leave day of Fiji. The boat's sort of being kicked out of the country. It's been here for 2 years, and they don't allow you to stay past that. So
Yeah.
we kind of have a deadline for when we have to leave. So we are a little bit scheduled now that for our departure.
Oh, awesome.
But
So are you guys excited to go down to New Zealand?
so excited. I mean, it's beautiful down there. There's surf everywhere. It's their summertime, so it's got like a subtropical climate. It's not going to be like the sweltering hot that we had here in the middle of January and February.
Yeah.
When we got here, it was just a complete climate change from California. We went from California, 40s and 50s and 60s to like 85 and 85% humidity when we got here. It was like just a shock. You couldn't sleep. You couldn't do anything for the first month we were here. I mean, it was just brutal. But then you get climatized, and then, now we're slowly changing with the seasons, and now we're in the sort of the middle of winter where it's actually cold. The water, I wish I would have brought like a 3-2 wetsuit now. The water's cold, and I mean, anybody else would show up as a tourist and jump in the water and feel like it was bath water, but your body just climatizes to everything.
Right.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, then we're going to go to New Zealand, and it's going to be a complete shock because you really get down there at the shoulders of their summer, and so you get down into some cold weather. And I don't think I have more than one pair of pants, and like I didn't even bring a hoodie, so I'm going to freeze on the way down there until I buy clothes when I get there.
Oh man, that's so cool. So did you guys, before you left, had you planned to make it to New Zealand from Fiji at this point in your trip, or does this just come to be sort of, ad hoc?
Man, ad hoc. I mean, every month it changes. And like when we got here, I think before we even left, we were like, yeah, New Zealand will be great. We'll do that. And then go to Indo. And that was sort of our original plan. And then we got talking to people, and they're like, New Zealand's really expensive. It's kind of sketchy sailing to get down there. And so we've changed our plans kind of full circle. But now we're sort of back to the plan of getting to New Zealand, and then heading up and doing Indo in next year, or a couple other stops first, but getting into Indonesia for the next cyclone season, I guess. So that'd be next January and February. So we've kind of got a destination, but every time you meet somebody, they kind of give you a new tidbit of information on why they like this or why that didn't work, and you kind of change your plans all the time.
Right. Nice, man. Oh, Brian, this is so cool, dude. I could keep talking. For you, first, just kind of give me, summarize the last 9 months. I mean, you had expectations that of what this might be like for you, but now here you are 9 months in. I mean, just kind of how's it been high level for you the whole trip?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that it's been really right on target for me. I think boat life has been what I expected it to be, and all living together, all four of us in a small space is what I expected it to be as well. I mean, it's good, and I really love the time that we're getting to spend with the girls right now and spend together as a family. That's been just awesome. But it's a small space, and there's not a lot of private space, and so there's definitely everything that comes along with that as well. The sailing life, I just have to pinch myself, Josh. I mean, I'm really absolutely living out my life stream right now, and it's been everything I wanted. We just wake up in these anchorages, and they're just absolutely stunning, and we've had a few instances where we've been able to pull up to places that just sort of have it all, really great diving off the boat, fun waves for the family, and just meeting people along the way. And Fiji's just been phenomenal. We knew we would have a hard time leaving. We certainly thought we would have moved on at this point, but we've just really taken our time and given Fiji the time it deserves to really just travel around and see all the different places and explore all the different islands, and it's just over the top. I mean, it's really phenomenal.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, you guys were so stoked to go, and just you wanted the boat life and everything with the kids, but there's always uncertainty, I'm sure you had probably 1,000 different uncertainties in your mind of what
sure.
might happen, might not happen, but that's so great to hear that you guys are just psyched on it. I mean, that's so cool.
Yeah, and I think it just goes for everybody. I mean, Brian seems really happy on the boat. The girls, every once in a while we have the conversation of what do you miss most about home, and the list is, I mean, we all miss our friends for sure, but the list is pretty short. Everybody's pretty happy with the life that we have right now, and we're all just really enjoying what we're doing and making the most of the time that we have. It's just been amazing.
Yeah, that's great. Now let's start with the boat itself, because you guys had purchased this vessel, you'd seen it, But really, like, you hadn't been on it, you hadn't really drilled into it. There was again, a ton of questions about it in terms
Yeah.
of just how did this work, how does that work, and now there's been learning curve, talk with Brian about things break, and you got to figure troubleshoot that and all this stuff. But for you, again, back to you, like your expectations for the boat itself. I mean, how has Renegade been for you guys?
Renegade's been awesome. She's really hit the mark for us. She's really well laid out for a family. She has 3 cabins, so everybody has their own space. And more modern boats are really open, and the cabins are these really tiny places. And for a family, that's for my opinion, not necessarily the best layout. I really like that we have a central settee where we all sit and have our meals and watch movies together. But then we also have real cabins. They have doors that close, stand-up space, lots of storage, and you can retreat and go into your own space and close a door and take a minute if you need it, or an hour or two if you need it. And so it's really great in that regard. The boat's performed exactly how we expected. She's heavy and slow and safe. We're not winning any races for sure, but we all have a lot of confidence in the boat itself and her construction. So that's just been really awesome. It's taken us some time to feel super confident, to have that level of confidence. I would say for the first few months, every night we'd be on anchor, I'd sleep really light, and I'd be really worried about our ground tackle, and are we going to pull our anchor, and is everything going to be okay? But then we've had to ride out some pretty good 35 plus knot winds at anchor, and I have total faith in our ground tackle. It's excellent. We have a huge heavy anchor and a lot of heavy chain, and so just having that confidence in the boat, it really just comes with time. Yeah. And we've had a lot of time on the boat now, and so I'm really stoked with her. She's great.
Yeah, that's rad. Especially that overnight stuff. I mean, because when you're lying awake and you're just like wondering, are you drifting? Did you pull anchor? And for you guys, there's reef probably very close to you everywhere. Like everywhere. How do you actually sleep? So like have that confidence where you're set, and you can go into a nice deep sleep and not worry about it. It's like, that must have been game changing when you kind of made that transition. Once you came to realize that Renegade, that which you became confident in the ground tackle and everything else, that must have been a really nice transition for you.
Yeah, it's really great. And she's a real simple boat. I mean, it's the perfect boat for a family like us who's learning. The systems are all really simple. It's straightforward. We don't have a lot of fancy high-tech gadgets and gear, which has been great. We've met a lot of other people who have really high-tech boats, and they constantly seem to be fixing things and troubleshooting, or not able to go places because their systems aren't working. And so I'm grateful that the systems we do have are really simple, and so it allows us to just fix things as we go, and we really haven't had to slow down or stop much for anything that's happened with the boat. It's been great.
Now, how about like the operation sailing part? I was just chatting with Brian and talking with you back when we met. Was like, you're both like salty boat people. You guys own a boat back in Santa Cruz, but you went through all the sailing courses. You did as much sailing ramp up as you could before you left. You did the Baja, which is a semi-long distance passage, along the coast of California, just to learn how to interact at sea with the boat. And so now 9 months in, I'm trial by fire. It's like you got to figure this stuff out. Whatever you don't know, you've had to figure it out. So how has that been for you, just like expanding your sailing knowledge and confidence over time?
Yeah, it's been great. And I'm sure Brian said this, but we just, when we first got on the boat, there was all this trepidation and nervousness around really getting out and putting up all our sails in big wind. And so we would put up one sail, or the next time we'd go, maybe we'd fly jib and jigger. And then we finally got to the point where we just wanted to really go and see what the boat could handle. And so throwing up all of our sails and throwing up different sail configurations, and, when the winds get high, really feeling how the boat reacts during different conditions has been great. And it has been trial by fire. We just put up the sails and go. And when it gets uncomfortable, we reef them in. And we've had we've been caught with too much sail up a few times. And so that's just part of the learning process where, you get hit with some big winds and you're down on your side and you're quickly pulling stuff in. And then the next time you don't put so much sail up. So it's been good. I feel like we're really dialing in the different configurations that the boat has. Fiji's tricky, as you mentioned. There's just reefs absolutely everywhere. And so when we were sailing up through the Yasawas and the Mamanuthas, we were in between, in and out of a lot of reef. And we really got our sailing feet underneath of us as we sailed out to the Lao, because it's a lot of deep water all the way up to the islands. And so we were going these big stretches doing these 24-hour trips. And so that really allowed us to have the time to play with our different sail configurations, because there wasn't the threat of hitting a reef that was a lot more prominent when we were in the Yasawas. So that really helped doing that trip out into the Lao.
And now you guys are talking about in just about a month, give or take, leaving Fiji, making a 10-day passage down to New Zealand, which is all open ocean. It's going to be an incredible passage for you. But now, so you guys, it sounds like I could hear in Brian's voice the confidence you guys have to make that. I mean, do you feel the same? Just you guys are ready and you feel like you can handle that?
Maybe Brian's more confident than I am. It's a big passage, and I don't know if Brian said, but it has kind of a bad reputation for big weather. Yeah. And so I think we're feeling cautious about it. We really want to make sure we make the right decisions in terms of timing and picking a weather window that's suitable for us and our boat speed. And this will be the biggest passage we do, and we're going to have to turn around and leave New Zealand after 6 months and do it again. So we really want to make sure that it's a comfortable ride, as comfortable as possible, and that we don't scare the girls, and that, we really want to make it feel good for everybody. Yeah. And so I think we're feeling a little cautious about that, but I think we're feeling very confident in the boat's ability to get us down there. I think we keep saying that it might be uncomfortable, but it's not going to be unsafe. So that's sort of our big thing. Nice.
No, that's awesome. I mean, it can only imagine what you have to consider to get your boat point A to point B being 10 days away, with a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old and yourselves safe and comfortable without freaking anybody out. I mean, there's going to be a lot of different things to consider. And
and I'd say that's been a really big a change for me in the sailing that I had done prior to this. Is just having the girls on the boat and being really in tune with them and how comfortable they are and what their fears are, and then tailoring how we're sailing and how much sail we have up so that, everybody's comfortable and happy. I'd say I'm a lot more cautious of a sailor with my kids on board than I had been without them on board.
For sure. So staying on the girls for a little bit, you have a 12-year-old and 9-year-old, and 9 months into and I asked Brian this too, I'm curious from your perspective, is what have you noticed, I don't know, just in changes in them as personally, maybe their maturity, their strength in the water, everything. I mean, what have you kind of noticed in the last 9 months with your daughters?
Oh, well, I'll start on a personality level. The girls, Isla's a really outgoing kid, and Malia's a little less outgoing. And I've just noticed that their ability to interact and be in uncomfortable situations, it's not uncomfortable, but situations that are outside of their norm, has really gotten better. I mean, we go into villages and we meet the representative of the village, and he takes us to the chief. And then we sit and we meet with the chief, and we do a sevu sevu ceremony. And, you go up to the chief and you introduce yourself and you make eye contact and you shake their hand. And then sometimes we just lounge around and talk with the people in the village. And the girls have gotten really good and patient at interacting with people that they don't know and being in situations where maybe they're a little uncomfortable. Maybe people aren't speaking the language around them, and, they're people that they don't know. And so I really seen them blossom in that way, that their ability to interact with in village life has gotten a lot better. And I would say from a physical standpoint, their water skills are just so awesome. Particularly the free diving. Brian probably told you we've surfed plenty, but not nearly as much as I think any of us would want to. Brian certainly has surfed more than we have. The breaks that we've happened upon have just been really kind of heavy and gnarly. Too much for the girls at time. Although we have had the opportunity to pull up on breaks where we all just surf, 4 or 5 days in a row, and that's been really great. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that our surfing skills probably haven't gotten that much better, but for sure the free diving is just phenomenal. Watching these girls, their ability to dive deep, to hold their breath, to play with pole spears, and they're really after learning how to hunt for fish. And that's been really awesome to watch that transition and watch those changes happen in them.
Oh, that's so cool. That is so rad. I can only imagine. I mean, growing up in Santa Cruz, where the water's cold, it's green, even gray and brown most of the time, then to go into warm, clear, I mean, just being in like a Maui, which is nice, but for like 6 days, they're just that you notice just even in that short time, like it's so much more welcoming for kids to learn how to dive and hold their breath and just be in the water. And I can only imagine after 9 months, your girls are just fish, and Brian mentioned he was down scuba diving and felt the tap on his head, and there was your young one 30 feet deep holding her breath like as a 9-year-old. Like that's so cool that she's able to grow that way.
Yeah, it's been really awesome to see. They're both just complete fish, and we spend just hours in the water, most days. And I would say the one thing with the clear, warm water that's been a trip for both girls is just Fiji, and particularly southern Fiji, is really sharky. And so it's been really interesting to see them come face to face with a variety of different kinds of sharks. And to watch, all of our comfort level has really changed around that. And so that's been that's been a nice thing to see, particularly when you have a spear gun in your hand, reaching out and becoming more confident in themselves and becoming more capable and confident in the water and with sailing too. I mean, I hadn't really touched on that, but they're really, looking at the sails and looking at our sail plan and going through the weather with us. And we're talking together as a family about why we're making the decisions we're making and where we're going and why we're leaving on certain days and what the wind patterns are and what sail configuration we're putting up. And so they're just constantly learning so much about really everything on the boat and everything around them. It's been really fun.
Yeah. And that's in addition to, so that like enrichment is in addition to like the homeschooling or the boat schooling that you guys do as well. So how's that been for you guys?
Oh man, boat schooling. It's boat schooling. Certain people are cut out to be teachers, and I have a whole new appreciation for the people in our kids' lives that teach them. I mean, what a skill set those people have, the patience. I'd say we're doing just fine, and homeschooling's coming along well. But it's definitely something that I've had to learn. I mean, it's not something that I would say I have a natural affinity towards. And so I've just been learning as we go, and it's been good. We made it through last year, and we're on to some new curriculum with the new school year that's starting. Actually, I just posted something on our blog today about our homeschool curriculum. And
cool.
It's been a real learning experience for everybody. We have a pretty set schedule, so we do Monday, Wednesday, Friday we do math and guitar, and on Tuesday we do language arts and French, and on Thursday we do science. So we have a real schedule set up with it, and we wake up in the morning and just kind of hang out together as a family, which is I think all of our favorite time because no one has to rush off to school or work. And then we spend a couple of hours doing school. Sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 3. It really depends on, the day and what we're doing. And, if the surf is good or we're all really itching to dive, sometimes we'll put it off until later in the day. And and then we get through our homeschooling and then, as I said, the girls, they both play guitar, so they're responsible to be playing guitar, 3 or 4 days a week to keep up that skill set. And the homeschooling's going well. It's nice to have a little bit of a schedule with it. It kind of keeps us all with a little bit of a pattern of our days. I mean, to be honest, it's half the time it's the only way I know what day of the week it is based on what we were studying for the day.
Oh, it's Science Day. It must be Friday or Thursday or whatever.
Exactly. So that's kind of been fun as well. But they seem to be doing well. They're both really good students. They say I'm the hardest teacher that they've ever had, which there's probably some truth to that. But I think we're getting through it just fine, and I feel like they'll be well prepared to assimilate back into school when we get back to Santa Cruz in a couple of years.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm like excited to see the difference that you'll notice and others like your parents and their friends and your good friends and family and everything that know them. And then when they see them re-immerse into daily life here, like the difference, I'm sure it'll be drastic, but in a very good way. I've just
Yeah, they've both had a lot of personal growth and physically, they're just getting so much taller and bigger. It's just wild I can't believe we've been doing this for 9 months, Josh. It feels crazy.
Yeah, I know.
I feel like we just left.
Really, I know. It's just time is just. Everybody says the same thing. It's just flying, and it's just absolutely flying. But one of the things too, and I was mentioning to Brian, is it's really fun to watch you guys or track you on Instagram. And I have this like love hate with social media because sometimes it's just like I like blink and I just been looking at nothingness for like 10 minutes on Facebook or Instagram. Like what a waste. Other times it's like I spend 10 minutes catching up on what you guys are doing, and that's time really well spent.
Yeah.
I feel enriched by that. But one of the cool things, and again back to the night we spoke at your house as you guys were packing a couple of days away from leaving, was like the fishing gear, and like you and I and you remarked upon like and Brian just like your stoke for the fishing aspect, and being able to catch food and the gear, and should we bring these lures and all that stuff. And what's really cool is looking at Instagram of you guys over time, and it was like early on, like the early days, like just January, February, and it was like your posts around getting a fish and you were so stoked, and it's not, it's a nice fish and you're so excited, and you got to share with the villagers, and the level of excitement and just newness to that was so cool. And then now you guys are like seasoned vets, you're getting these bigger fish, and it's just cool to like see in your posts and the pictures, just like this growth, the evolution of your fish catching over time. Like I've been so stoked to see like that, the wahoo and, the mahi you guys got side by side. I mean, so talk about that from your perspective, your stoke on just getting fishing.
Sure. Well, we love fishing. I mean, Brian and I think I said this last time, that the very first thing we did when we graduated from college was besides finding a place to live was buy a fishing boat. And we both just absolutely love to fish. And so when we get ready to go on passage or leave, we, crank the engine on, put the boat in gear, and Brian looks at me and goes, "Okay, get the poles out." And so, I mean, those poles are in the water first and foremost, usually before we're even out of the reef pass. And what we find in talking to other sailors is that we're probably a lot more successful fishing than most people. And I think it's because we have 3 or 4 lines out the back constantly, and we're really in tune with the gear that we're fishing and make sure that the gear that we're fishing is fishing well. So, bringing it in and make sure that our rapalas are diving deep and that they're not tangled in seaweed, and that if we have a skirt on the surface, that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, and that we're trolling the right gear at the right speeds. And so we're probably a little bit more in tune than most other people who are sailors first.
Yeah.
And I'd say that it's just really paid off in spades. We just primarily eat fish as our protein source, and we've just been slaying it. I mean, we've got so many big fish on the ship. It's just been awesome. And you're right. When we first got going, we weren't catching a lot of the bigger fish, but we also weren't in the places where those fish reside or are swimming. So we were catching a lot of inner reef fish because we were inside the inner reef. But once we started getting into these outside passes and we were able to sail more and sail at a little faster speeds with all of our sails up, it's all sort of evolved together, right? We've just started catching bigger fish, and it's really funny. We seem to catch fish in the most wily of conditions. So it's not, I mean, our best fish are caught when we have all of our sails up and we're heeled over and there's 25 knots of wind. And it's kind of a joke because when conditions get like that and we're starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable while we're sailing, I always look at Brian and say, "All right, I bet we're going to catch a fish right now." Because sometimes it's like the last thing you need at that point in time is to deal with catching a fish, because everything goes pear-shaped when that happens. You hear the reels ding off, and then we're pulling in other gear, and we're taking sails down, and we're trying to slow down a little bit, and getting the gaff ready. But it really takes all of us on the boat. I mean, Malia gets in there, and Isla gets in there. They're pulling flashers out of the water and bringing the sails in, and we're trying to slow the boat down, and it's always a race to see who can get to the pole first. And, I'm usually in there elbowing the girls out of the way to get to the reel. So it's a lot of fun. And we definitely I mean, you could probably hear us from a quarter mile away if we're catching a fish. We get pretty loud and pretty excited. So
Yeah, I bet. I mean, just like a quiet sail, sailing's not quiet, but there's no motor on, and it's just like you're just kind of vibing out. I can imagine. And all of a sudden the reel goes off, and
oh
everybody
yeah,
just like, oh, like just like you have a few minutes of just crazy, frantic fun to
yeah,
get that fish in. That must be
oh
so
yeah.
cool.
It's so much fun. And like when we got that double hookup with the wahoo and the mahi, it was just so much fish. It was just too much. And so it was
Yeah.
really fun to pull into an anchorage. At that point in time, we were buddy boating with a couple of other boats. And it was so nice just to be able to pull in and say, here's half a mahi and here's half a wahoo and here's some fillets to this other boat, and really be able to spread the wealth. It's been really great.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm guessing fish is like a currency out there, and to your point too of sharing with boats you're hanging out with, but also rolling up to a village and bringing a fish. Like, how could they not like welcome you guys with open arms if you're bringing them food?
Yeah, well, it's so great because a lot of, especially in the outer islands, the fishermen who fish for the village tend to fish on the inside of the reef. And so if since we're coming from outside of the reef, fuel is expensive and premix is expensive, so they don't really spend a lot of time trolling because it's just a really expensive way to fish.
Right.
And so if we can roll in with an outer reef fish and bring it to the village, they're just overjoyed.
Wow.
I mean, it's like currency. But we were out in the outer islands for 2 months, and we were out of just about everything in terms of our stores on the boat. And so we would roll in with fish, and then in return we'd get cassava and dalo, which is taro, and they were giving us spinach because they subsistence farm, so they have a ton of fresh vegetables, which we were out of. But then we show up with fish, and it was this really great trade of, here's this great fish you guys don't get from outside of the reef, and then they would reward us with all of this really great vegetables, which we didn't have. So it was kind of a beautiful thing.
Oh man, that's so cool. That's so cool. The culture itself, then, again, an inch, sort of a learning curve-ish. I mean, I know it's a sweet culture, super embracing, but again, like you guys are getting more and more comfortable over time. You and Brian as adults, but also the kids, So just talk about what's your perspective on the culture and how you guys have grown to understand it, embrace it, and even get really comfortable in it over 9 months.
Yeah, it's one of the beauties of being in a place for so long is you really get to know the culture, and you really get to understand how society works here in Fiji. Josh, I've traveled all over the place, and I have never met a culture or society as welcoming and people as friendly as the Fijians. It's really a beautiful place in that regard. We've really taken a liking to the outer village life. We've spent a lot of time meeting different people and spending time in different villages. And, recently we were on the island of Kindavu in this village on the south side of the island. And we were there for a while for us. We were there for probably 5 days. And we got to know some of the people in the village, and they welcomed us in. And I spent three evenings in this woman's kitchen with her, learning how to make different Fijian dishes. And she had some of her lady friends who were there. And so just hanging out with these women in this kitchen over a really small single burner kerosene stove or a wood stove, and learning their dishes, and they just seemed so overjoyed that there was even an interest to do that, and to spend the time with them, that it was really great. And one of the things is just the kindness that's shown to us when we show up in a place. We launch the dinghy from our boat and we arrive on shore. And by the time we get to shore, there'll probably be 10 or 15 kids, all, screaming bula, which means hello, from the beach. And the dinghy gets into about a foot of water, and they're all out in the water, pulling the dinghy in and helping us tie it off. And then as you start to walk up to the village, before you know it, you have a hand in each one of your hands, and these kids are walking with you and holding your hands and looking up and smiling at you.
Wow.
And and the girls too. I mean, they're holding hands with these kids, and just it's so warm and it's so welcoming, and it's really just such a beautiful place to visit. And they just love visitors and showing their culture and sharing their time with you. It's, they invite you in for tea and make you a snack, and it's been really great. And it's been really great for the girls as well, just seeing how these other people live, and it's a really simple, basic life. They live in very simple and basic homes, and they are just some of the happiest, most loving and welcoming people I've ever met.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's
Yeah.
really helped kind of restore your faith in humanity, seeing
Oh, does it
people
ever.
who live like that, just like without expecting anything in return, just pure, unselfish, happiness.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, God, that's so cool. So the culture is insane. You're fishing a bunch. It's awesome. Sailing. So you yourself, like surfing. I mean, like you know, it's sometimes the waves are super heavy. You're probably like, oh, I'm not going to go out. But again, you've been having 9 months of some pretty some good days. So how's your surfing been for you?
Yeah, well, I would say I've definitely stepped it up. Brian's really good at coaxing me into the lineup, and then I'll catch a wave and paddle back out with a smile, and he'll go, okay, come in a little deeper, come in a little deeper. And before I know it, I'm sitting at the peak and catching waves, and so that's been really great. And I would have to say, without Brian and his ability to gently coax me out there, I probably would have just said no a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But we get to these places, and I'm the only person he has to surf with, so
Yeah, he needs you out there.
so it's symbiotic. It works out for both of us for sure. And so I would say I've stepped it up. It's been great. I'm riding a shortboard more at home. I rode more of a longboard more often, and
Yep.
so the waves have been good. Most of the waves we've been surfing have been lefts, and Santa Cruz is the land of rights.
Yeah.
So that's been really fun. I've been learning a lot about how to fall appropriately over shallow reef. We've all taken our bumps and had our cuts from the reefs. So that's kind of been new. And there's nothing like dropping in on a wave and looking below you, and you can see the fish swimming,
Oh,
and
wow.
you can see the coral right underneath of you, and you ride down the line and kick out, and it's just so beautiful. The surf is beautiful, the water's really nice, and the quality of waves is just so good in these places.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm,
Magical.
I'm yeah, and I'm sure Brian had mentioned that sometimes the surf is just so big or just so heaving or so hollow and fast that it's just been too much. And on those days, I just try to go out and watch and take pictures or just
Yeah.
enjoy it. It's really pretty to look at, even when it's above my pay grade or skill level.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Just being out there and seeing it and just feeling the energy of the ocean out there, which is so raw and very different than like you mentioned here in Santa Cruz for a number of different reasons. But just yeah, being part of it and seeing that clear blue water and waves, and whether it's Brian getting barreled or somebody else, just yeah, I can just imagine just tripping out and spending hours just enjoying that part of it.
Yeah, and mostly we're surfing these reef passes, and so the diving and spearing on the inside of the pass is just as good as the waves at the pass as well. So it's
Yeah.
like you show up and we tie the dinghy off to whatever we can. Usually we drop a hook at the edge of the reef, and we'll surf, and then we'll dive, and then maybe surf some more if it's good, and you can really just make a day out of being in the water. So even when it's heaving or heavy, we always find a way to get in the water and snorkel around and see what's there.
Oh, that's awesome. So 9 months in Fiji, in about another month, give or take, heading down to New Zealand, and you'll spend some time there. And then right now, or then plans may change, but then you're planning to go back to Indonesia, later on.
Yeah.
So what will that put you at? Like, if you guys follow that plan, is like
Uh-huh.
when will you hit Indonesia? Will that when or do you even know?
Are you asking if we're putting extra years onto our trip?
No, no, no.
Because we might be.
I'm getting
So
there, but I'm easing you into that question.
so we'll be down in New Zealand. There's a season to get down to New Zealand. The season to get down there starts, from October to mid-November. And then the safe season to leave New Zealand happens around May and June. So we'll be leaving New Zealand around that time frame, and on the way up we will stop in New Caledonia, which we hear has diving and surfing, and Vanuatu, which has really good diving and surfing. And then we plan to make our way up through the Solomon Islands, which is supposed to have just fabulous diving that
Yeah.
I can't wait to get underwater there. And then up around PNG, Papua New Guinea, and then head to Indo. But it's a really long trip. So as much as we've been sort of stationary in Fiji, we've been moving around a little bit. We're going to be moving a lot faster to get ourselves to Indo on time.
Right.
And we'll get up there, but then we're going to hit the off season in Indo. And I suspect we'll end up in Thailand or someplace up in Southeast Asia, Malaysia area for the off season for Indo. And then we'll probably go back to Indo for a surf season. So I think we'll end up in Indo for quite a bit of time on 2 separate trips.
Got it. So
Yeah.
if that all pencils out, conservatively speaking, in terms of like transit and time, I mean, when would you be there? Is that like a year from now? It sounds like a little bit more than a year from now.
No, it's like a year from now. I think we want to be up there around this time next year.
Okay. Got it.
And then so I think that's when we would get there, but that starts to get into their off season that you don't want to be there for. So then you go up and you get out of Indo for a little bit and then come back.
Yep. Got it.
Because I think it's going to take us so long to get up there that we're gonna arrive right about the time we should be leaving.
Yeah.
But that's just that's kind of the nature of it.
Right. And so then to the question that I was getting towards that you called me out on quite quickly then is like, I remember, and I should have listened. I listened to our first podcast like 6 weeks ago, and I can't totally remember what you said, but I remember the deal was, look, we have like the finances and the home situation to do like a year for sure, maybe 2, but you kind of kept it vague. But now we're talking like, it's a solid 2.
It's a solid 2 and maybe 3. I think that's where we're at.
Yeah. I love it.
And I think we've always said, so long as we can do it and we're liking it and we're liking each other and we're stoked with where we are and what we're doing, then I think we'll keep it up. But it's not indefinite. I'm pretty sure, particularly Malia, who's our older daughter, who's 12, is going to want to be back in Santa Cruz for high school at some point. So at this point, we're looking, she's missing 8th grade this year. She'll probably miss freshman year next year. And maybe we'll bring her back for 10th grade.
Yeah, got it. If she's lucky.
Or maybe
if she
not.
begs and pleads. That's so awesome. Yeah. Well, like I mentioned, like we first talked, and I really admire you guys for like following through on a dream. I know, and it was a cool story. And for folks listening who haven't heard the first part of this, it's really cool to hear your dream, Robyn, which really is the impetus behind this whole thing, which you had from way back when, and then you and Brian worked together to get the point you're at to actually fulfill it and follow through with it, because so many people, like including me, have all kinds of things they want to do, but here you guys are doing it, so I mean, good on you. And that's just, we'll have to have a part 3 here in the next months.
Oh, that'd be fun. We'd love to do a part 3, and really, I mean, it's been so fun to have this dream and just to start stepping out a plan and then to see the plan come to fruition. And I think I said this a little bit ago, but I really just have to pinch myself some mornings when we wake up and one of those beautiful picturesque anchorages and the diving's great and the surfing's good. And it's really just unbelievable, Josh. It's just really a dream come true.
It's awesome. It's so great. Well, I'm really, really, really thrilled to hear you guys are so positive and so amped on it still. The girls are just doing so great, and you guys are loving it. So, and thank you for taking time to catch us up. It's funny because I bump into just, some of our West Side friends that we all have, the kids and everything. And every now and then somebody goes, "Hey, have you talked to Robyn and Brian lately?" Because they heard the podcast. I'm like, "No, I follow on Instagram. I don't know much." They're like, "Oh, cool." Yeah. So I'm like, "Yeah, we're going to get them on at some point." And so everybody's honestly like waited, like there's a whole crop of people here waiting with like bated breath to hear the podcast just to catch up on what you guys have been up to.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just to let you know, we've really enjoyed listening to your podcast on the boat. We all gather around on the settee and play them and all sit around and listen. And we really enjoyed the Stoke Grom series. Malia really likes being able to listen to everybody, and hear what's going on back home. So it's really great. We love what you're doing too.
Oh, that's cool. Well, if she's ever interested in having a Stoke Grom episode, I'd love to have her on and talk and hear her stories and perspective on being out there. So
yeah, well, she's a Stoke Grom. I'm sure she'd love to do it. I'll talk to her about it and we'll let you know.
Okay, awesome, cool. Well, Robyn, thank you, so much, and good luck with everything. Be safe, and you guys are doing such cool stuff, and we'll keep tracking you. And next time, just call it, 6, 9 months, anytime you guys want to, and you're at a place like you
Yeah.
are now, a port, and some good internet access. Let's get back on and catch everybody else up on what you've been doing the next phase of your journey.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. We'd love to do that. We'll let you know in about 6 or 9 months when we're leaving New Zealand. Maybe after we get to New Zealand and back, we're going to feel pretty accomplished. That might be a nice time to talk
Heck
about
yeah.
how
Yeah.
we survived our passage.
Yep, perfect. No, that's a great one. That'd be cool. Cool. Well, hey, thank you so much, Robyn, and it's great talking to you and catching up.
Yeah, likewise. We'll chat soon.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to another podcast episode. Can't do it without you, and so thrilled to have you here supporting myself and the podcast and all the guests continually. Always appreciate a positive rating on your podcast app, whether it be Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, you name it. Just helps grow the podcast and spread awareness. So thanks for that. And then any social media mentions, always super appreciative. And if you know somebody who you think would be great to have on the podcast to share about their ocean life, please hit me up. I'd love to chat with them. Or if you think you'd like to, let me know. Email is josh@thisoceanlife.tv. All right. Thanks, guys.